Hello and welcome back to the Rah Rah Rabbit. If this is the first time you're watching one of my videos, my name is Max, and for several years now I have been exploring the potential and the possibility of using lucid dreaming to better understand complex mental health issues and trauma. I myself have quite a lot of complex mental health issues, and as a result I've struggled to get the appropriate help because no one has ever really been able to say with 100% confidence what it is that I'm experiencing. There's far too much for me to go into in this video, but in short, I started to hear voices when I was about 11-12 years old, and after a couple of years I finally opened up to my GP and I was referred to an early intervention into psychosis team, but they weren't sure that what I was experiencing was necessarily psychotic in nature. Although it resembled it in many ways, hearing voices, feelings of paranoia, of being watched, of feeling like I wasn't in control of my body, that somebody else was controlling it, and so on, things like that. But it wasn't like a clear-cut psychotic episode or psychotic disorder. And I spent quite a few years with them because at the same time I was also going through a transition. I am a transgender person, I'm female to male, so I had a lot of stuff going on at that point, and I think even though they weren't convinced it was psychotic, I still stayed with this team for a long time to help me get through all of my transition stuff. But once that was over, I was discharged and I wasn't referred to the community mental health team. I was basically left with nothing. So I have been left to pretty much figure this out on my own, although when I was discharged, on my notes it did say that they were giving me a working diagnosis of dissociative identity disorder. Now, it's a working diagnosis because, again, I don't think the psychiatrist was really all that confident in stating it officially. Plus, he worked with psychotic disorders. That was his area of expertise. I guess maybe he wasn't comfortable or confident enough exploring dissociative disorders. And again, that wasn't his job. However, I didn't stumble upon my discharge notes until many years later, so for a very long time I've just kind of been trying to work out these experiences by myself. I knew that I heard voices. For me, that was just like what I would say I was experiencing if I had to describe it to somebody else. And even if it wasn't necessarily psychotic in nature, I didn't know how else to view it. I was aware of DID, but I just didn't think it was possible that I could have that was what I was experiencing, because I guess I didn't know too much about the disorder, and like with most people my views were typically quite ignorant, and these people in my head, these people I'd come to know so well, I just couldn't maybe I couldn't accept that they were ultimately parts of me, because they didn't feel that way. They still don't for the most part. So yeah, I think maybe there was a lot of denial about the possibility of DID. And as well as that, I was aware that trauma was a massive part of that, and for me, I just didn't think I'd felt anything or experienced anything so traumatic that it could cause something like this. But, I do block out emotions, I don't have a lot of memories, so of course I really don't know, and I guess because I'm shut off from my emotions, I don't know how much something has affected me. But with this working diagnosis and exploration of myself and therapy and so on, I've come to a place where I realise that DID or OSDD is a more suitable fit, I suppose. But that isn't the point of this video. The point of this video is to talk about the journey that I've been on for the last few years in regards to trying to understand these alternative personalities, what they represent, why they exist, and so on, things like that, through lucid dreaming. Now, I could ask them these questions in waking life, but none of them can really answer that question. They all have their own individual theories and ideas, but they were equally as confused as I was. Having been a lucid dreamer for a couple of years, I thought that maybe lucid dreaming could provide me with a concrete answer, or at the very least give me something more to work with. I'd heard about people using lucid dreaming for personal growth or to work through issues before, and it was something that I hadn't really experimented with at that point in my lucid journey, because I was still ultimately getting to grips with things and just wanting to use it for for messing around, basically. But I figured that with a lucid dream there would be less barriers to my subconscious mind, that it would be easier to find answers. And so that's what I did. The first person I focused on was Scott, because Scott was approachable and friendly, and I figured it would be a safe voice or alter to start with. I considered him my best friend. I didn't think there was anything too traumatic there that I was going to uncover if I tried to probe him in my dreams and find out information. So I figured this was like a safe option to begin with. And the plan was get lucid, find Scott, ask him these questions, get my answer, simple. But as with most things, especially lucid dreaming, it wasn't as straightforward. In the first lucid dream of this experiment, I was just having a regular dream, and in that dream someone was trying to break into my house, and I do tend to have these anxiety style dreams quite a lot. And in this one I just had that sudden spark of awareness that something wasn't quite right, and I knew that I was dreaming, so that fear went away. I just let the people break into my house. I just walked off down the street, and as I was walking down the street I remembered my intention to find Scott and to ask him these questions. So the first thing I did was I just kept saying, I want to find Scott, I want to find Scott, over and over again in my head. And as I got to the end of my street, I turned right into the next street, and I saw this kind of dark figure behind this translucent wall. And even though I couldn't make out the features of this person, even though they were standing still and they were just stationary and there was nothing much to them, I knew that it had to be Scott. So I walked up to him, and as I said, there was this big translucent wall that was in the way, that was separating us. I could only just kind of make out what was going on behind the wall. As I went up to it, I tried to kind of push it and move it out of the way, and the words "access denied" flashed up in big red letters, and this really surprised me because I just wasn't expecting that. And I don't know, I guess I had been quite naive in that I thought, well, I'll get lucid and I'll just get my answer like that, especially with Scott, because I felt there's nothing to hide with Scott, there's nothing to uncover necessarily. So the fact that the dream had prevented me from getting to him, and the words "access denied" felt like a very clear message from my subconscious mind that I'm not ready to access this stuff yet. But I persisted. I felt that was the best thing to do, and I continued to have several lucid dreams over the course of, I think it might have been about 2 months. In fact, from that first access denied dream on the 12th of November 2012, it wasn't until I think early February 2013 that I got what I would consider to be a accurate and reasonable answer from Scott. So each time I did this I got a little bit closer to him, but still the dream would try and change things. Either dream characters would start freaking out and they'd try and pull me away from Scott, or as time went on he was less this static silhouette and started to become started to look more like himself and actually started talking, but either I couldn't hear what he was saying, or there was always some kind of barrier. It was very frustrating until I finally managed to speak to him. Again, as with a lot of my dreams, I do typically do dream initiated lucid dreams, and that's always worked quite well for me. So I typically just kind of get that spark of awareness and know that I'm dreaming. And in this dream, I managed to find him, I managed to have a conversation with him, and I asked him, what is it that you represent? Why are you in my life? Why are you around? And the answer that he gave was that he was in many ways this idealized version of myself, from the way that he looked and behaved, how he was very confident, he was very good in social situations, very kind and caring and all of these things. And as well, because bear in mind I grew up as a girl, Scott was all these things that I'd wanted to be for so long, and getting that answer was something that made a lot of sense. I suppose it was something that I could definitely make connections with there, and it was just it was a very validating moment, and felt like a lot of weight had been lifted off my shoulders, because here I was getting this answer, I was hearing it, and it felt for the first time I was making some kind of progress in understanding myself and the whole situation. Now, I did do this dream a few more times afterwards because, even though that was a satisfactory answer, I didn't want to just take it and believe it straight away. I wanted to repeat the dream to see if that answer changed, because ultimately I didn't know if I could have been influencing the narrative. I don't know. These are the things that I had to ask in this experiment. I had to make sure that I repeated the experiment and see if the answers stayed the same, and if they changed, what changed, what stayed the same. And again, each time I kind of did this, the answer was the same. I mean, it might not have been word for word, and bear in mind that different level, when you're lucid, you don't always have the same level of lucidity. Your awareness can go up and down, so sometimes the dream can still be quite dreamlike and not make a lot of sense. But in these particular dreams, that was always what Scott was saying, that yes, he was this role model figure, this big brother figure. He was all of these things that I want to be, that I am, I suppose. And he helped me a lot through a lot of difficult years, being that figure for me. So cut to 2014, and this time my focus is on Darrin. Now, Darrin has been with me the longest. I think it's been like 15 or 16 years now, Christ. But he has also been the most troublesome and traumatic. He was always being very aggressive and angry, quite threatening, just generally quite unpleasant towards people. And I felt it was important to try and figure him out, but given his nature, I was a little apprehensive. But because I'd had good success with Scott, I felt I was at a point now where I could just try and figure Darrin out. So as I said, he had always been very angry and aggressive, and I really wanted to understand that, because for me, anger is a very confusing emotion. It's very distressing. I don't really understand it. I don't really feel anger. I mean, I do, but it causes me to dissociate. So yeah, I wanted to try and get a better understanding of this. And similar to Scott, it was the same thing of when I would get into a dream, it would usually take quite a few dreams to really get to communicate with him. There would always be some kind of barrier, but those barriers would eventually drop as I continued. And in one dream, I got lucid and I went searching for him, and I found him in a car, and there were loads of kind of shadowy figures around that was slowly kind of moving in towards him. And he told me to get in the car. I did, and he sped off, and I just said to him straight out, what is it that you represent? And he was very distracted. He didn't give me a direct answer. It's quite common for Darrin to not give direct answers, but as he was driving away, he kept saying that he was trying to take me away from all these shadowy figures that we'd just seen, and that he was trying to protect me from people. He was trying to get me away from them. He didn't really address the anger or anything. It was just in that moment, in that dream, he was very focused on protecting me and just getting out of that situation. Then there was another dream that was quite eye-opening, quite powerful, and helped me see Darrin in a different light. And again, just another regular dream. Managed to realise that I was dreaming and get lucid, and I went into like a public restroom, and I kept calling out for Darrin again, and I went into this public restroom, and I noticed that there was Darrin's hoodie on the floor of one of the cubicles, because he always wears a green hoodie. And when I approached it to pick it up, I realised that it actually was Darrin. He was curled up on the floor, kind of hiding away. And it was very odd for me to witness him here in this fetal position. He seemed very vulnerable, which was, the complete opposite of what I associated Darrin with. And it felt like it wasn't the right time to start probing him for questions on what he represented and why he existed. I ended up asking him in the end, what do you need from me? Which was something I hadn't gone into the dream with that question in mind. To be honest, I don't think I had even thought of that previously, what they needed from me. And as Darrin laid there under his hoodie, he just said, I need you to listen. And again, this was quite odd, because I think I was expecting a more defensive or aggressive answer from him, but he said he just needed me to listen, and that was kind of odd. And as I stood up and I think I was going to leave this bathroom, I looked in the mirror and my reflection was Darrin. He was just stood there clear as day, incredibly, perhaps one of the most vivid sort of dreams I've had of him, or lucid dreams. You know, I could see his face, I could see all of his scars, all the details on him, and it was really like a very powerful thing. We were just stood staring at each other, but I felt very connected to him, which was, again, something that had never happened before. And as I continued to work with Darrin through dreams and asking questions, a more softer side came out, or a more, I guess, scared side. I suddenly realised that a lot of this anger was just masking feelings of fear, of deep fear, and his anger was a way of I guess, dealing with that. And as I, continued to ask him questions about himself, and I did ask him what he represented and why he was around, his answer was that he was all of this anger and all of this pain and all this stuff that I either haven't dealt with, or I'm not even consciously aware has happened, or all of these things. He takes all of that and protects me from it. And yeah, he is a very paranoid person. I would, to be fair, almost describe a lot of his behaviour and the way that he thinks as being quite psychotic, which is interesting because Darrin was the first voice that showed up, and when I was getting help initially, they did think it might have been psychotic, so potentially Darrin was psychotic and I wasn't. Just makes everything more confusing, doesn't it? But that was such a big thing, and I guess for me, what I have taken from that the most is that Darrin is vulnerable and scared, and that there's a reason for that. Maybe I don't fully understand what that is, but that gave me something massive to work towards. So, I have done this with my other alters and voices. Scott and Darrin were the ones that I guess documented the most, or was the most focused on, because I wanted to, I wanted to do this experiment for myself, but also potentially for other people who are in similar situations and want to do a similar thing. I have done a few talks about this. I have spoken at a couple of Charlie Morley's events. Again, usually in my previous talks, my previous videos, I have described my experiences as either just hearing voices or maybe being psychosis. I haven't really mentioned DID before, but now that it's something that I'm kind of coming to terms with and realising does fit, I want to keep on doing stuff like this, and I want to help other people with DID or similar experiences. I guess it doesn't matter what diagnosis, but if you have similar experiences, this is something that I want to do. I want to explore the potential of healing through lucid dreaming, and now I am aware that there are a lot of negatives potentially, that there will be some pros and cons. I guess an obvious one is, lucid dreaming is a skill that you have to practice, and it takes time, and not everybody wants to do that. People might not be in the right place mentally to put in that kind of work, and some people it's just not going to be accessible. And as well as that, a big concern is, if you're doing trauma work like this, how to keep yourself safe. Safeguarding is obviously a big thing, and so obviously I don't know the full implications. Some people, it could make them worse if it does bring up repressed memories that they're just not ready for yet. I will say, in my experience, it seems that my subconscious mind has done a very good job in blocking things out, even in a lucid dream state, and it has very slowly filtered information through, but I don't know if that would be the case for everybody. That's what I wanted to talk about. I kind of just wanted to summarise the work that I've been doing over the last few years in one video, because I've spoken about it in various other videos, but I wanted it all in one video in a nice consistent way. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope this video was helpful for you. If you would like to support me on Patreon, you can. There will be a link to that in the description. As well as that, please follow me on my social media accounts. The majority of stuff that I do on social media is more art and comic related, but my lucid dreaming stuff and my DID stuff, all of it gets tied in, so would really appreciate people following me there. So thank you very much for watching, guys. I have been Max, aka the Rah Rah Rabbit, and I'll see you in the next video.